Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. This is going to be for November, Tuesday, the 7th. I'm recording this on the Monday. And as I'm doing this, Trump is actually apparently testifying. Apparently, he has already been reprimanded by the judge once to stop sort of going on and on and on and kind of issuing statements like sermons as opposed to answering the question. So obviously Trump feels this is his way of getting his message out. He's just going to say whatever he wants and ramble on the way he does. So what I thought was, I also saw on Monday morning a poll that came out that talked about how Trump is beating Biden in like 7 or 9 or something swing states that Biden won in the last election. And so I'm not liking the energy that's sort of swirling around. It's starting to get very heavy. It's starting to feel, it's I'm not even sure what the word is. It just disorganized. And it's almost as if things have become disassociated ever since this war started in Israel. The energy has been sort of wonky. I think it just has to do with the amount of aggression and rage, death, sorrow that is sort of floating around our energy sphere here on the earth. Not to mention the fact that this war is still going on in Ukraine, and that has been getting no attention. What else has been getting no attention, and I honestly think that this is part of the equation, is that all we hear about these days is what Trump is doing, what the Trump kids are doing, the dumb things he's saying on True Social, the dumb statements his lawyers are making. We're not hearing about anything that Biden is doing because, as usual, the media is very focused on Trump. And of course, listen, we all know this, right? Trump loves when he is the focus of the media. He doesn't care if it's good or bad. He just wants his name out there. And the media is doing an amazing job of honoring his request. And so the energy, and you can tell just from my own attitude, the energy is staticky, and I'm not loving it. So what I wanted to do was try to bring it all back down and see if we could get a bit of clarity about what is going on energetically and how that is really, really impacting the politics of the United States and what's going on. We've got Pepperville, continuing to hold up these military promotions. He's never been in the military. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. There's just a lot going on, and it feels as if almost as if everything is like slamming brakes and nothing's moving forward in a way that is positive or helpful. So I'm going to stop rambling, and I'm going to reach out to spirit. And I have a couple basic questions, and I'm hoping they can just answer them sort of all at once, right? I want to know how Biden is doing in terms of the upcoming election. I want to know how Trump is going to do with his legal issues as it will impact or not impact his election or his attempt at election. So, because I mean, many of us have said that we just don't see Trump getting to the finish line. But I don't think any of us have any great clarity on what that looks like or how that is going to happen. So I'm just going to try to take a couple of deep breaths and calm down and zen down, and see if I can reach out to spirit, so that we can maybe get some clarity on what is going on. Um, and the purpose is to try to, bring us all to center and to give us some focus that is not sort of so full of turmoil, is what it feels like. So here we go. Spirit, can we please get a overview of the US election that is going to be a year from now? We're right at the beginning of November. Um, what that looks like, and how, as we perceive the main players right now, how they are going to do. What does that path look like? What does that road ahead look like for both Biden and Trump? And while I'm at it, kind of the GOP as a whole. So the thing to understand, we're going to start with Biden. So the thing to understand is that Biden is plodding along. He's doing his job. He's doing what he is supposed to be doing. He is accomplishing many, many of the things he set out to do. There's a problem with the media not getting his message out. And there is a bigger problem with the Dems not getting his message out. And so what you have is you have people, voters, citizens, who are being inundated with Trump news, and depending on where they get their news, a lot of it just doesn't even seem like bad news, right? Because it's being tilted so that it looks very positive, if you will, for Trump, the election, the Trump camp, etc. The really terrible things that he's planning on doing, like apparently the latest thing is he is recruiting really, really hard right line lawyers, because that's who he wants as the legal representative for the White House. Because again, he hasn't figured out that the lawyers in the White House are the lawyers for the United States, not the president. He wants to fill up the White House with Roy Cohen's, okay? But the messages are not getting out. The wrong messages are getting out, and the positive ones are not. And so what you have is people who are not getting the message about what Biden is doing. And what that's doing is this is setting up this sort of sense of dissatisfaction with people, because there isn't clarity about what is actually being done in the White House. So that is part of the problem. And the unfortunate and true thing is that Trump gets clickbait. He's clickbait. All they have to do is start a news program with his name and people focus. Put his name in a YouTube video or a news release, and it gets the focus. And, that has been something that everyone has sort of had to deal with and scramble with over the last several years as he has been on the scene. As far as Trump goes and what is going on with him, the energy around him, despite what is getting put out there, is very toxic. It is very, very angry. During the last election cycle, the presidential election cycle that he lost, one of the things that was happening was you had people who were not staying at his rallies, people who were not attending his rallies. He was doing, rallies to half filled stadiums or venues. But there was sort of this rule, if you will, that you couldn't photographed the audience so people couldn't see how empty it was. So it always made it feel as if he had these roaring crowds around him. But again, that is not what's happening. Um, he is speaking to smaller and smaller crowds, and people are having, and I'm talking about people who are going to these events, are having a harder and harder time sort of following his trains of thought. Not that that was ever easy, but it has become even more difficult as he's just all over the map talking about really things that are just kind of unhinged. It is important to understand that the people who go to see him, the people who support him, the fact that he runs around with the name president is sort of irrelevant to them. They see him as an entertainer and they go to see him to be entertained. They focus in on what he's doing and saying because it's fun, it's entertaining, it makes them laugh. And for reasons that nobody actually has clarity on, they have lost sight of the fact that he's running for the most important seat or office of the United States. So it becomes incumbent on the rest of the people to pay attention to all the other things that are going on. And in doing so, to start amplifying that energy and getting that message out in terms of, um, just sort of one-on-one conversations about what's actually going on in the White House. There seems to be this overwhelming kind of thing where there is a pushback against what Trump says, and it is this idea of trying to correct what his followers think, as opposed to creating an energy where the chatter and the talk is really more about what is going on and what has been done. Now, some of the things that Biden has done, sort of one of the, I think it's the Build Back Better, a lot of that stuff has been implemented and gone into effect, but it has not yet been, people aren't seeing it in their communities, right? The increase in, construction to roads and bridges, et cetera, et cetera. Some of that has started, but not all of it has started. And so there are huge pockets where that funding is there, it's been approved, it just hasn't started yet. And so people aren't seeing it, or worse, they are seeing it, and the Republicans are taking credit for it. And while the Dems push back once or twice, they need to push back all the time, continually. And so there is a disconnect between what people need to hear versus what people are hearing. And that is impacting the poll results. And of course, the polls in and of themselves are skewed to get certain responses. So the polls in and of themselves can't actually be trusted at this point. But it is, the concern now is more about the energy. None of the other GOP runners who were, trying to snag the nomination for the presidency are doing particularly well. They're not picking up a great deal of traction. They're not picking up enough traction. And, even when they say, oh, well, Nikki Haley has gone up by 3 points. Well, she's now at like 13 points and, she's tied with DeSantis. That's the end of the discussion. And it flips right back to Trump has 50% and this is what he did and this is what he said. So even the GOP, in fact, predominantly the GOP, doesn't have an effective way to push back against him because he takes up all of the oxygen. So let's understand that that is the energy that we're dealing with right now. That's where we're at right now. And it does not help that, you've got Russia and China and another very large country who are starting to flood media, the internet, with disinformation. And so then it becomes incumbent on everybody to become even that much more discerning about what it is they're absorbing and what it is they're giving validity or energy or truth to. So that's where we are. All right, spirit, where are we going? What does this look like as we move forward? Okay. So there's sort of almost been like this funny little strategy that has gone on within the White House and by extension through the Dems. Um, in some ways, they're not actually trying to take over the media message right now because by and large, the Trump news is not good news. And so in some ways, they've sort of like literally sat back and gone, okay, well, we're going to ride this out. We're going to let them chew up all of the oxygen because, in the grand scheme of things, it's not actually helpful to Trump. And the more people who are sort of inundated or starting to focus in on what is going on with Trump and all of the legal issues he has, is in some ways actually more helpful to the Dems, if you will, and hurtful, if you will, to the broader base of the Republican Party. Not those who have, who are Trumpers, but the rest of them, those rare ones that are floating around. The other thing that's going on is that the independents are really starting to focus in and more the younger voters, those Gen Zs. Those are the ones who are focusing in on this. They're paying attention. Um, you're not seeing them showing up or their attitudes or their feelings showing up in the polls. So what it feels like is almost for the rest of November, December, even into January, it really feels as if the Dems are they're not sitting back and doing nothing. They're getting their message out there, but it's in many ways, the Republicans are doing the work for them. You've got the Tuberville thing. You've got the Mike Johnson thing. There's a lot going on that is really reflecting the Republicans in a negative light. And so in some ways the Democrats are going, we're going to, keep making our statements and we're going to keep on saying that, they're not serious people, they're not doing the work of the people. But they are so dangerous to themselves. They're sort of almost letting them run with that energy. And so that's really helpful to know because there's a strategy that's going on that perhaps we weren't quite sure of. But there is a strategy that's going on. The Dems have not taken a step back as much as they're not pushing forward. They're holding their space. And that is because in the new year, when things really start to shift away from um, the the magic, if you will, the Teflon energy around Trump. And that energy starts to shift. And he actually really starts to having to be called to account. You're going to see that that is when the Dems start pushing forward with a message of, is this the best they have to offer? Is Trump and Tuberville and Mike Johnson, is that really the best of it? The Matt Gaetzes, the Boberts, the Greens, is that really the best of what the Republican Party now is? And if it is that what the American people want? So let's just take some sort of comfort from understanding that that seems to be what's going on kind of in the background. There's a lot of concern about, Biden and his health. Biden is fine. Energetically, they're showing me that Biden is fine. He is doing the work. He is the man for the time, whether people can see it or not. And he is getting the job done. He will start to pick up momentum and speed, but it feels like not until actually the spring of 2024. That feels where you're going to start getting a bit more of a balance. Um, as far as what's going on right now in New York with Trump and the case, the civil case that has been brought against him by Tish James, um, that is going to go very well for New York and not so very well for the Trump business, the Trump family. Um, they are not doing themselves any favors in terms of their behavior, the impromptu press conferences on the steps of the courthouse. Many of them are playing to an audience of one, which is Trump. And when Trump's there, he is talking to his base and, AON and Fox and whoever the other guys are. So, but what is going to happen is that as these cases do not go well for him, you're going to see where it's like it's almost as if the focus or the energy is going to shift a little bit, where in some ways people are going to get kind of tired of hearing about Trump losing everything, and so it's almost going to become commonplace for him to not succeed in his legal wranglings. And let's not forget, there's other cases going on. There's a fraud case. About some telecommunication thing that's also going on, I think, in January. The E. Jean Carroll thing is still out there. So it's not just these big cases, there's also these little ones, and they are going to have an impact and an effect on energetically the way Trump, etc., are coping. Because it really is going to be one body slam after another after another. So you can continue to anticipate that Trump's energy is going to continue to become more toxic and more um, outrageous. But Spirit is asking us to think of it this way. They're saying, think of it as um, like a gas tank, a tank of gas, okay? And for in a car. And what Trump is doing is he's driving at like 100 miles an hour, okay, which is about 160 kilometers for those of you, who do the kilometer thing. Um, he's burning up gas. He's burning up his gas. He's burning up his gas with this outrage. But what's going to happen is at some point that tank is going to continue to lose its gas. It's not going to get refilled because there aren't going to be winds that are coming along to refill that gas tank. And what's going to happen is he's going to start sputtering. Exactly what happens when you run out of gas. And so that's energetically what Spirit is showing me is going to happen. So right now, it's like if he wants to drive around at 100 miles an hour and burn up all of his fuel, he can do that because at some point, not he is going to start running out of that energy, and that energy is not only his publicity, it is not only his outrage, but it is also his physical stamina. It is also his mental acuity. It is also his verbal um abilities, his cognitive skills, all of it is going to start slowing down and sputtering because he's burning up so much energy right now. And in a lot of ways, um, you know, the rest of the world is sort of sitting back and waiting for that to happen. Um, Make no mistake, he's getting some support from countries outside of the United States who perhaps would not be considered friends of the US. But when somebody becomes so out of control, there truly is only so much spin that you can put on it. And then meanwhile, you have slowly but surely momentum building, construction projects getting started in the spring. You have all kinds of stuff that's going to be coming together and coalescing kind of spring, summer of 2024, which is really when the focus and the momentum needs to get started in terms of that November 2024 election. So right now, what Spirit can tell us is this. Trump is burning up what he has, but he's not going to have anything to replace that with. Biden is step by step moving along and doing what they need to do. The more outrageous the Republicans behave in Congress, the more stable, serious, and focused the Democrats look. And so, even though right now it feels very chaotic and anxiety inducing, let that energy just float over you. Don't get drawn into it. Don't get sucked into it, because in many ways, while the outcome has not been set in concrete and predetermined, the energy of the outcome is continuing to move in a way that supports the healing and the growth of the country of the United States. And so it's important that we all look for the rainbows, that we all look to the sunshine, that we all infuse everything with powerful, powerful light, because that is where there is going to be progress made in the direction that you want to make it in. It is also important to understand that you can't fix something until you take a good look at it. And usually, what you're taking a good look at is honestly not that attractive. They're showing me the grossest thing. Like, thank you. You couldn't give me a better picture. They're literally showing me a clogged drain. And it's like a bathroom drain, if you will, not even a kitchen sink drain, but like a bathroom drain where you have all of this long hair, and all the long hair has been gooped up by the conditioner that goes down the drain, and it is just one unholy mess. And what they're saying is that you can't get that water to drain properly until you go in and you extract this hideous mess and you look at it and you get rid of it. And then when you turn on the water runs free and clear through the drain. I'm sorry for that visual. I'm sure it's upset a couple of people's tummies. But where you're at right now is that pulling that mess out of the drain and looking at it and having to acknowledge that this is what was going on under the drain, right? As things are going along and the water was draining, and people weren't paying attention to what was going in the sewer, in the drain system, because what was going on sort of on the surface appeared to be working. Maybe it wasn't working great. Maybe everybody wasn't happy, but it was working. But where you're at now is a place where that drain is plugged, and it's not just extracting it, it's looking at it and figuring out how you prevent that from happening again, how you put in new rules, new regulations, new guidelines. And that is the work that is going on now. And so that process of looking is not pleasant, but it is necessary. So recognize that where you're at right now is a difficult time. It's a time of looking at the underbelly, and the other underbelly is not very attractive. You see the extent of the corruption. You see the extent of the spinelessness. You see the extent of the lies and the outrageous behavior, attitudes, and know that you're going to be moving from this difficult place into a brighter, stronger place. You have to walk through where you are right now. And that's why you're forever and ever being encouraged to stay in the light and to hold on to your power and to control what you absorb and take in, and that you are discerning and careful about what it is you hold, thank you, as your truth, and the truth of the direction of where you're going. Okay, I'm hoping that was helpful. It just feels like things are very statically right now, and I guess I want everybody to recognize and understand that it's okay for them to be staticky. Sometimes that is just necessary energy, but it doesn't mean everything is falling apart. Okay. Alrighty. Everything going well. I will see you for minis on Wednesday and Thursday. Please continue to send in your amazing questions for Pendulum Fridays. You guys have been sending in great questions. I really appreciate it. And thank you very much for being here. Until next time, take care and be well. Bye-bye.